Hello everyone, this is Attack the Backlog, the podcast where I, Marc tries to make a dent in their backlog one game at a time. This episode is all about Max Payne 3, the game where Max Payne becomes Max on fire and Remedy is replaced by Rockstar doing their best Tony Scott impression. There's head shaving, Hawaiian shirts, and more purposeful screen flickering than anyone could ever ask for. Max Payne 3 originally came out on May 15th, 2012 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and 2 weeks later for PC. I played the game on Xbox 360, where disc swapping is required if playing the physical version of the game, or an additional download that isn't mentioned as being required when initially downloading the game, if playing the digital version on Xbox 360. It is also now, at the time of this recording, available on the Xbox One and future consoles thanks to backward compatibility. Yay! Max Payne 3 also introduced multiplayer because when I think Max Payne, I think competitive multiplayer shooter. Okay, let's get one thing straight. I love Max Payne. I love the character, and I love the first two games. I played the third game when it originally came out, but I fell off after a few hours. Part of the problem was my then youthful stubbornness and inability to play games on anything other than the hardest difficulty, but I also couldn't click with Rockstar's take on Max Payne. Gone was the neo-noir setting, replaced instead with a more gritty, real setting and an overabundance of style with just a hint of noir left over. If you like words flashing on screen, excessive flickering, and regular image distortion, Max Payne 3 is the game for you, baby. Oh my god, it's for you. It's so for you. If just the thought of that sounds exhausting, one, it is, and two, it doesn't feel like Max Payne. Max Payne 3 throws out everything that came before in exchange for a game that was so heavily inspired by Tony Scott's Man on Fire that it's kind of ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, I love Man on Fire. Love might be strong, I really like it though. It's a flawed but entertaining film, and Christopher Walken is in it, so how could you not at least kind of like it? Just a little bit for the Walken? However, Max Payne is not Man on Fire. I'm not saying a Man on Fire game can't work, Max Payne 3 shows it can, but just make a Man on Fire game if that's what you want to make. Don't waste a new Max Payne game on something that doesn't feel like Max Payne. I don't care about the story, the characters within it, or the locations visited because it all feels like something Max Payne himself wouldn't put up with if he wasn't forced to by the developer's hands. But it's more than just the story and way it's delivered that makes Max Payne 3 feel like not Max Payne. What was once a stylish action game full of slow motion gunfights and gravelly narration is now a cover-based shooter with more cutscenes than a Kojima game. Cutscenes that constantly break up the action and kill any chance of having good pacing. On top of that, your currently equipped gun will always change to your pistol after every cutscene, which is pretty annoying. It sounds annoying, doesn't it? And it is, especially when a cutscene transitions immediately to another gunfight, one where maybe that assault rifle you're carrying would be the better option. Slowing down time is more of an afterthought now thanks to the reliance on cover, and I probably spent less than 10% of my entire playthrough in bullet time. Sure, you can slow-mo dive as much as you want, just like in the previous games, but given how vulnerable you are after diving and how long your old crotchety self can take to get back up, it makes playing this way less viable, not to mention the levels are designed around cover and the use of it. Playing on easy helps make it feel like the previous games in the series, but even then, you can go from full health to almost dead so fast that you're still going to be better off sticking to cover whenever it's available, and it's usually available. It almost feels like they designed the game around having a regenerating health system, but then remembered Max Payne doesn't do that, and instead of continuing with their changes to the Max Payne formula, decided to stick with the painkiller system instead. I get it. If I heard Max Payne 3 was going to have regenerating health, I would have rioted as if I were in Rockstar's other game, State of Emergency, which isn't available via backward compatibility. Not really about the whole rioting thing, because ultimately who cares? But I would have been disappointed until I played the game and was disappointed for so many other reasons. Another problem that is 100% on me and is in no way the game's fault is that Max Payne was and still is a PC series first and foremost. The aiming and precision required can only be achieved with a mouse and keyboard, something I don't see often these days. That's not to say the game is unplayable with a controller, far from it, but I did wish I was playing with a mouse and keyboard during my entire playthrough. I could have rebought the game on PC PC, sure, but I already owned it on 360, so I wasn't about to buy a second copy just to make it a slightly better experience. Better controls wouldn't change the fact that it's a cover-based shooter now where you can only hold 3 weapons at a time, because that's realistic, and this Max is all about realism, even though all realism went out the window the second the game wanted me to believe Max Payne would ever buy a carton of milk. It's not all bad though. Max Payne 3 utilizes the Euphoria physics engine, which was first used in Grand Theft Auto 4, so the way characters interact with the environment and react to getting shot does feel organic if overly intoxicated at times, which is kind of fitting for a Max Payne game, and the game does look good from a technical standpoint, though it's bland from an artistic one. I also don't think it's a terrible cover-based shooter as much as I've harped on the gameplay. It's just that the legacy that comes with the Max Payne name makes it impossible to look at Max Payne 3 without comparing it to the games that came before. In the end, Max Payne 3 is a good game but a bad Max Payne game, and if you're someone like me, someone who loves the first 2 games, I'd be surprised if you weren't at least a little disappointed if the game didn't bring you at least a minimum amount of pain. Get it? Because Max Payne? Minimum pain? Max Payne, minimum pain, Max Payne, min pain, min pain, min pain, Max Payne, no, okay. Anyway, that will do it for this here episode of Attack the Backlog. Once again, I am Marc. Y'all can find me on Twitter and pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you'd like to see me streaming games like Max Payne, you can do so over at twitch.tv/PX Sausage. If you'd like to see the videos I make, like the one for this here episode of Attack the Backlog, you can do that over at youtube.com/Pixelated Sausage. Speaking of Pixelated Sausage, take a dot, put it at the end of their name, Pixelated Sausage. Then you get a C, an O, and an M. You bunch them together and you put them after that dot, which you could call a period. And you got my site, pixelatedsausage.com, which is where you can find this podcast and the Pixelated Sausage podcast, both of which are available on podcast services across the globe. You can also check out my art on the site, and if you see something you like, you never know. You might just be surprised. And if you are, you can purchase a print of the piece you fancy. And if you fancy the site in general and anything that we do, please go over to patreon.com/PXS and support us that way. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoy this here episode, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Over. So I guess I'd become what they wanted me to be. A killer. Some rent-a-clown with a gun who puts holes in other bad guys. Well, that's what they had paid for, so in the end, that's what they got. Say what you want about Americans, but we understand capitalism. You buy yourself a product and you get what you pay for. And these chumps had paid for some angry gringo without the sensibilities to know right from wrong. Here I was about to execute this poor bastard like some dime store angel of death, and I realized they were correct. I wouldn't know right from wrong if one of them was helping the poor and the other was banging my sister.